Hi everybody. So in this third kind of explanatory video, I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am. Not all of you will necessarily be interested in this, but I know some students like to know a little bit about their teacher, so they kind of get an idea of what they're getting into with that person. So the first thing you can see, and you've probably already seen this, is that I like to wear silly hats. I mean, this pandemic has made it hard to connect with people and to kind of be authentic, and those of you who you have had classes with me before know that I kind of like to be silly and kind of have I'm not always silly. I mean, I can also be serious, but I like to have a kind of fun, joking, humorous relationship with people that I work with. So that's, I try to lighten things up a little bit by wearing a different silly hat for all my videos. They get recycled because I only have so much room in my apartment for silly hats, especially if they were all this big. So, all right, so cut to the chase here. So obviously my name's Jackie. I spell it with a Y. It does matter to me. And I didn't put my last name here, but you've probably seen it on the course outline or on your registration papers. My last name is Valet, not Valley. Valet. So kind of like if you're going to a cafe, you say cafe. Well, valet. A. Okay. It matters to me too, and I will show you the same respect and learn to pronounce your names properly as well. My pronouns he or they, either one. I'm pretty neutral about the whole gender thing. So if you want to complain to any of your friends about how weird and annoying and cheesy your anthropology teacher is, that's fine. Just use one of the right pronouns. So I'll talk a little bit about who I am, just so you get a sense of me as a whole person, but also I want to spend most of the time in this video talking about my teaching philosophy. So my views of teaching and how that applies and what that implies for our class. So here's some boring work stuff. Maybe a bunch of you don't care about this, but sometimes when students have the chance to ask me questions, one of those questions is how long I've been teaching. So I've been teaching since 2002 at Vanier. I've had some other things in other places in between, but this is where mostly where I've worked since 2002. And you have some information about my education here. There's a Performa program for CEGEP teachers. I took some courses in that after a couple of years of teaching and realizing I didn't know what I was doing, because this master's degree that I got here in anthropology did not teach me how to teach. So other than teaching at Vanier, I'm involved in a bunch of things. I co-founded with some other people something called the Open Door Network, which aimed to sensitize people working at Vanier on the realities of youth who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, two-spirit, intersex, queer, or asexual. And I also co-founded the Vanier Indigenous Circle and the Indigenous Studies program. So these are kind of areas that I like to work in to try to kind of change the educational system from within to make things better for different populations that are kind of marginalized in our society and sometimes have barriers to accessing education. So this is my education here, Concordia mostly, but I'm almost finished a PhD from the University of Montreal. So when you complain about a lot of papers, I've been for years I've been working on a 300-page PhD thesis. 1.5 line spacing, not double spaced like some of your work. So I can sympathize with a lot of the stress of that. Okay, so outside of work, I'm a parent. I have a 21-year-old. I'm an activist. As you can see my areas of interest from the previous side. I've been involved in the queer and trans communities and in Indigenous solidarity outside of the college as well. I'm of mixed descent, mostly white West European settler background. I do have some Indigenous background, Innu more specifically, which is a First Nation from northern Quebec, but I didn't grow up in that culture. And I'm very white appearing, so I've kind of pretty much grown up as a white person in this society. And I find that important to acknowledge, especially in doing anti-racism work. I don't want to appropriate identities that are not mine. queer and trans, autistic, that will come up in access needs. We'll talk a little bit more about that kind of thing, like people, having different access needs, and including me. Teachers have access needs too. I'm a bookworm and a blogger, so I like to read a lot and I like to write a lot. Other interests listed here: camping, hiking. So I get out into the woods as much as I can, and sometimes the only woods that are available are the Lost Woods and The Legend of Zelda. I like TV shows. So these are some of the shows that I like to watch, sometimes over and over again. And I like pretty much all kinds of things that are quirky and silly. So, and I look forward to learning a little bit more about you as well. I put this here not to kind of make this about me, but just to show that, I'm a human being too, and sometimes we can connect on some of these other things as fellow humans who have a shared interest, and it can help kind of the teacher-student relationship. And relationships between students as well, because, we often make friends because of our shared passions. So, one of my passions is teaching. I love being a teacher, and I've developed over the years philosophy about teachings, and this is kind of a list of my main values when it comes to teaching. I probably forgot some, but these are some of the main ones. So, for example, I like to promote a desire for lifelong learning. I'm really not a fan of this system that a lot of us have gone through, where we're trained to see education as something where you cram a bunch of information into your brain and just kind of regurgitate it, and then you move on to the next thing, and then someday you get a job and pretty much forget everything you learned in school. And I really, for myself, I like to learn something new every day. I know it sounds cliche, but I really feel that makes life more interesting. And I like to support students in developing in cases where that already doesn't exist. Some of you already have it, and that's great. And I'll totally support that. So basically, after you leave my course, I hope that you'll retain some, even if it's not the concept, some seeds of things that you'll be curious about and pursue on your own. I like to support students on their individual paths, which means that if you are in this class and say you're a social science student, but you don't want to stay in social science, it's a path towards something else, or you're not sure what you want to do, you're not really sure if you like it, and maybe your path might wind up leading you in a whole other direction, that's okay with me, I'm not here to try to convert everybody to become anthropologists, and if you do, that's, hey, cool, we'll talk about it and I'll give you whatever suggestions and support that I can. But if you decide, in the end you want to be a filmmaker or a plumber, or you want to go into the hotel industry and tourism or whatever, that's great, because anthropology can be useful in all those fields, and we need people who are going to work as lawyers and nurses and plumbers and all kinds of things to have an anthropological perspective. So and if your path leads you to not pursuing higher education because there's something else you'd rather do, I will support that. And that is connected to this next point of recognizing that student success takes many forms. For some people, success is figuring out that this is not what they want to do. And I have experience with that because I did a year in physics in university, where you have to pay a lot more money to realize that's really not what I wanted to do. So it felt like a failure at the time, but really it was a success. For some people, success is just getting that 60 because you're hanging on by a thread and you've got so many other things going on and you just want to pass. And I will respect that. I'm not going to kind of judge you for just trying to get a 60. If success for you does mean getting those high marks, I will support you. If you feel, you need more support in your writing skills or things like that to help you get up to that 90, I'll take the time and help you do that. Part of my teaching philosophy is fostering mutual compassion and self-compassion, fostering mutual respect and self-respect. So, again, I understand that you're all overwhelmed. Your teachers are too. We're all overwhelmed. And I think that if we take the time to be compassionate with each other and try to understand where the other is coming from, it'll foster a better relationship. So, for example, I might do things that annoy you. Right? Maybe you don't like the way I organize this course. Maybe it annoys you that I only have office hours on certain days of the week. Maybe it will annoy you if I take 24 hours to answer your Mayo, or if I don't check them on the weekend. But or if, I might make a mistake when I enter your marks into Leia, and instead of, maybe getting mad, maybe go, you know what, Jacky's human too. He's allowed to take his weekends off from work. He probably made a mistake and gave me a 56 instead of a 65. It's not malicious, so I'll write to him and point out the mistake. But having compassion means that you won't jump down my throat. Believe it or not, that happens a lot. And in return, I try to have compassion and understand that, yeah, you're all overwhelmed, so you don't mean to be, to let off steam on me. But at the same time, I have the self-compassion to go, you know what, yelling at me in a Mayo is not cool. So if you write me a Mayo with like 10 exclamation marks, why did you fail me? I did all that work. Well, maybe start with, hi Jackie, I noticed I think you made a mistake in the mark for my assignment. Can you please look into it and get back to me? Thanks. That's great. I will look into it. I'll be happy to look into it and correct my mistake. So, having that mutual compassion goes a long way. Again, like, I show mutual compassion in a few ways, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. But yeah, self-compassion, self-respect also. Stand up for yourself if you feel your boundaries are being violated, but also respect each other. Respect me, I respect you, you respect each other. Humility and transparency. I'm very much influenced by Anishinaabe worldviews and the idea of humility, where, you acknowledge that you don't know everything. You only have a partial perspective because you're only one human being on the planet, and that, you might be wrong. You can never really be sure of anything in this world of ours. So that's part of it for me, and so I don't pretend to be an expert. I don't like to be considered an expert. I'm someone who's devoted pretty much all my adult life to studying anthropology, and I love it and I love thinking about it, but I can be wrong sometimes, okay? And if I make a mistake, I've had students tell me, oh, I read this thing and it contradicts what you said, and then we go, oh, okay, let's figure this out. Great, it leads to discussion. But humility is also recognizing that we're all important and we all matter in the world, and so that we all have some strengths that we can contribute, and so I try to foster that among students as well. You're all human with all your strengths, and that you come into a course and you can contribute so much just with your rich life experience, because you all have a rich life experience no matter where you've been and what you've done. So when we talk about anthropology, which is all about humans, and you being humans, if you have experiences that you can, you read something in the text, or we're talking about something and you can relate to it, and you want to share something, that's great, because you're a part of this world. We all are. And the last thing there is transparency. I try to be clear on why I do things the way that I do. I don't necessarily go into all the detail all the time, because that's what we'd be doing all semester. But when students have questions about why I'm doing this way, or I'm always open to answering those questions. Okay, so how does this look like concretely? Don't worry, we're almost done. How does that translate? How does those philosophies about teaching translate into what I do? Well, for example, I go to some lengths to ensure that I can support students in feeling that they belong in my classes. So, for example, I like to learn my students' names. It's going to be hard this semester because I'm not going to see all of you all the time, right? But when we're in person, usually by the end of the first month, I have learned everybody's names in all of my classes, even if I have like over 100, sometimes 120, 140 students. I respect the pronunciation of students' names, so if I'm not sure, I ask, one-on-one, and I write it down so that I can learn to pronounce it the way that you like to hear it. I respect people's pronouns. So if you use a pronoun that is different than the one that people would tend to associate with you when they look at you, that's something that you can let me know about. There's going to be a questionnaire that you'll be able to let me know things like this. And I will totally respect that. Even if you say, you know what, I like to use for example, she, but not in front of other people because I'm not out yet as trans, or that's fine. Okay, you can navigate that. I'll respect your access needs. There's a whole other presentation on access in terms of access for, regarding disabilities, financial barriers, dealing with discrimination. So that's a whole separate thing, but I will respect access needs to the best of my ability, working to avoid oppressive language and behavior. So I try not to say stuff that will hurt people. It's all about just not hurting people. It's not about political correctness. It's about not hurting people. And it's just a polite, respectful thing to do. I'm human. I can make mistakes. So if I do make a mistake and someone points it out to me, I'll try to make amends and do research so that I can do better and stop doing the hurtful thing that I did. And as I mentioned before, respect everybody regardless of the marks, right? So sometimes after a class, or somebody's, didn't pass a test, or they didn't pass the class at all, they see me in the hallway in another semester and they're kind of shy and they're looking away. And I'm like, hi, how are you doing? Like, I probably forgot your mark. I don't keep track of all this in my brain. The things I will remember are things like lack of respect. Then I'll be like, maybe I'll still say hi. But, like your marks don't matter to me, like in the sense that I will respect you no matter what. Other ways in which this translates, these philosophies translate, is that, for example, the whole thing about compassion. So for me, I show compassion to students by understanding that it's easy to get overwhelmed. So for one thing, if students ask me for extensions, generally I say yes, as long as, because here's where the self-compassion comes in, is having boundaries and asking people to respect those boundaries. So what I ask, if you need an extension, ask me before the day it's due. Not on the morning of, okay? Before the day it's due, ask me. Be honest about why you need it. It doesn't have to be a big story. I will understand if you say, what, I procrastinated. Because, we procrastinate not because we're lazy, but because we're afraid, or we're stressed, or we're perfectionists, and we're paralyzed. So you can be honest about that. I won't judge you. I'll try to give you some tips. Instead of, I got distracted, this happened, I played this game all day, instead of making up some story about your fifth grandmother dying, I'll respect you more if you just, if you're straight with me. And, sometimes students go, oh, yeah, you did me a favor, thanks, and like, you know what, all I ask is that you pledge to show the same compassion to other people when they need your help. Of course, while respecting your own boundaries. My teaching philosophy also translates into a desire to learn from students. So again, like I said before, if you have life experiences that you'd like to share that relate to the course, please do. I'd love to learn from you. Or if it's just like, you know what, Jacky, you'd be a lot cooler if you knew this song, right? And send me a song that you think is cool. That's great. Sharing life tips, right? So throughout the semester, I like to share some tips about being organized, about, just student life, things like that. But I'm also open to hearing your tips. And I already talked a little bit about this, about being transparent about how I organize things, why I do things the way that I do, and so on. So that's, just to end things off, there's this quote that I really like by a scholar who is Mi'kmaq. Her name is Marie Baptiste, and she wrote this book here, Decolonizing Education, and she talks about how education can be liberating, or it can domesticate or maintain domination. So for a long time, education has served to reinforce racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, not just in terms of the material that's taught, but how the institutions are shaped, and who has access and who has power. So we can change that, and I really believe that with changing our ways of educating can kind of help eliminate those kinds of discrimination in society if we try and if we work together on it. Okay, so I'll leave you on that thought. And again, if you have any questions or concerns about anything that I've said here, please feel free to reach out via Mayo.